Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Birmingham. Whoever you are, whomever you love, wherever you are today, and wherever you are on your spiritual journey, you are welcome here. Today's guest preacher is Reverend Jim McGaw of Sunny Hill UU Church out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Each week this summer, we will be showcasing UU ministers from across the country while Reverend Julie is on vacation and study leave. To all who are with us this morning, welcome home. Welcome, visitors. Please let us know that you're here by filling out our connection card. It can be found on bit.ly/UUCB connection, and I'll put that in the chat. We're building a UUCB habitat house in Centerpoint this summer. Sign up to work on Saturdays at bit.ly/UUCB serves. Again, I will put that in the chat because both links are case sensitive. Please watch your email for more announcements from our church. We light this flame as a symbol of our faith. By its light, may our vision be illuminated. By its warmth, may our fellowship be encouraged. And by its flame, may our yearnings for peace, justice, and the life of the Spirit be enkindled.
Can we lift our voices in this way while some
Our church is supported by those who call our church home and by those who support the efforts of our church to change our world for the better. We share our cash plate every Sunday with organizations whose work reflects UU values to care for marginalized persons, advocate for real and systemic change, defend our environment, and promote justice and equity for all. This month's Share the Plate recipient is Alabama Interfaith Refugee Partnership, an organization birthed out of our own congregation that helps refugees resettle in Birmingham. During this time of social distancing and online worship, please know that church expenses continue. Therefore, we very much appreciate your continuing to pay your pledge or offer your donation by either mailing a check to the church office or by using PayPal or Venmo. Our Venmo account is at UUCBHAM. Please designate whether your offering is for UUCB or AIRP. Thank you for your generous support of our church and our Share the Plate recipient. May we give in love and in hope.
Using the chat feature in YouTube, by speaking aloud or hearing it in your heart, please give voice to what is on your heart today. May we open ourselves ever more fully to that eternal mystery which lures us onward toward life and creativity. May we find the courage to live our faith, to speak our truth, and to strive together for a world where freedom abounds and justice truly does roll down like water. May we know the fullness of love without fear and the serenity of peace without turmoil. May we hold one another in the deep and tender places with compassion, and may we grace one another by sharing our own vulnerabilities, being ever mindful of the divinity within that makes soulmates of us all.
Ubi caritas et amor, ubi caritas Deus ibi est, ubi caritas et amor, ubi caritas Deus ibi est, ubi caritas et amor, ubi caritas Deus ibi est, ubi caritas et amor, ubi caritas Deus ibi est. Soon, love, soon. Soon, love, soon. Soon, love, soon.
There'll be a fire burning in the temple of our peace.
Soon, love, soon.
There'll be the soaring voice for a silent plea.
Soon, love, soon.
We will hold white in the grave, and we will be as one God, and we will be as one people, and we will be as one God, and we will be as one people.
We will find illumination in unnatural light. You will travel 1,000 miles without leaving my side. We will find we never knew hatred ran so deep. Such a wide, wide chasm of faith to leap. And we will be as one God. And we will be as one people. And we will be as one God. And we will be as one people. Yes, we will be as one God. And we will be as one people. There'll be an evolution of the human soul. We will know that to be apart is to be truly whole. We will know the pattern of centuries rise and fall. We will know that the fate of one is the fate of all. And we will be as one God. And we will be as one people. And we will be as one God. And we will be as one people. And we will be as one God. And we will be as one people. And we will be as one God. And we will be as one people. And we will be as one God. And we will be as one people. And we will be as one God. And we will be as one people. And we will never, but we will be as one God. And we will never, and we will be as one people.
Jesus was a helper, long ago, of love and compassion. When Jesus spoke to his followers, it was often about how to share more, love more, and forgive more. Jesus also talked a lot about the great unfolding mystery named love. He called this mystery God, the way many other people have done. Sometimes, Jesus' followers needed help to understand his teachings, so he told stories to help them, which we call parables. This is one of the parables that Jesus told his followers. It's about a shepherd. A shepherd, of course, is someone who cares for sheep, who makes sure their bellies are full and that they're safe from predators, because there are quite a few other animals that would hurt sheep if they could. In the days when Jesus told this story, a shepherd wouldn't have had a fancy pen or corral for her sheep. There was no fence to create a big space for her flock, Instead, she would have had to take her sheep out into the hills to graze and eat. In this parable, the shepherd didn't have just 1 or 4 or even 10 sheep. She had 100 sheep. At the beginning of each day, the shepherd took all 100 sheep to the hills of green grass and then counted to make sure that they were all there. At the end of the day, she brought them home again, counting to make sure that all 100 sheep came home safely. One day, the shepherd came home and counted her sheep, and counted only 99 instead of 100. She counted again to make sure, and again. And even though it was cold and dark, and there were critters in the hills that might hurt a shepherd too, she left the 99 sheep who were safely at home and went out to find the lost sheep. When Jesus told this parable to his followers, he was trying to tell them 2 things. First, that the great unfolding mystery that we call love, and that some call God, loves each of us so much that love will always, always go to those who are left behind or are in danger. Second, we understand ourselves to be part of the great unfolding mystery called love. Most of us who are Unitarian Universalists want to be like that great unfolding mystery. We want to be love's partner and its helper. That means that we are the shepherd. When everyone else is safe, we're called to notice the few who are in danger and go out into the cold and dark to be with them. Love doesn't rest and wait. Love, in the form of the shepherd, leaves comfort behind to be a helper. So may it be with all of us.
And now let's sing our principal song together. One, each person is worthwhile, to be kind in all you do. 3, we help each other learn. 4, and search for what is true. 5, all people get a vote. 6, build a just and peaceful world. 7, we take care of the earth. That will bring us back to me and you too.
First of all, I'm delighted to participate in this virtual pulpit swap with UU ministers from around the country. My name is Jim McGaw, and I serve as minister at Sunny Hill, a UU congregation in the South Hills of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Thank you for welcoming me into your congregation today, and thank you for doing the work of loving and sustaining one another and bringing more love and more justice into the world. During my first year of seminary, some years ago, I worked 5 mornings a week at a men's homeless shelter where I learned a lot, not just about the lives of these men, but also about how we as society regard and behave toward those who are marginalized. We do not treat them well. Perhaps what impressed me most about the men at the homeless shelter is what they taught me about both the resilience of the human spirit and the great human longing to move toward healing and wholeness despite the odds against them, despite their current dire circumstances, despite the terrible experiences they might have had over the course of their lives. Yet, in the face of all of the challenges that they were facing, many of these men still managed to find hope and faith and share it with others, including me. But these men were struggling, are struggling still. In recent months, the pandemic and its related challenges have made that struggle even more challenging among people experiencing homelessness. I was surprised and frankly a little shocked to learn that more than half of the men who were staying at the homeless shelter where I worked were military veterans. I was laboring under the naive assumption that our veterans received more and better care and attention than these men were getting. I assumed wrongly that surely no war veterans in our country would be allowed to slip through the cracks to the very bottom of our societal and economic ladder with virtually no meaningful help or support. But I was, of course, wrong. I remember one man in particular, a veteran of the Gulf War, who came home with his body intact, but his psyche and his spirit mortally wounded. The other men at the shelter were worried about him because he was waking up screaming in the middle of the night and pounding the wall in his sleep. One morning, somewhat out of the blue, he asked me, "How do you pray?" And I said, "Pray?" Now, it does seem like a perfectly reasonable question to ask a divinity school student, but I wasn't quite sure how to answer. I mumbled something about my own burgeoning practice of centering prayer, which involves finding a quiet place and choosing a sacred word or phrase to put at the center of my consciousness in order to contemplate and experience the presence of the divine. Not surprisingly, I saw this man's eyes glaze over somewhat as I described my way of praying. And I realized that what I was talking about probably was not going to work for him at this particular time. The fact is that when you are wounded and tortured by something like inner demons, as this man was, contemplative centering prayer may not get you where you need to go. What he really needed was what we all need sometimes. When you are suffering, what you need to do is cry out. You need to make known your pain. You need to give voice to your grief and ask for help. And this particular kind of prayer is one that tends to get lost in the shuffle, particularly among those of us who enjoy a certain amount of privilege, and especially those of us who are religious liberals, who tend not to talk or think much about prayer at all, let alone utter a prayer ourselves. It was pretty clear to me that this man was suffering from PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, which was, in this particular man's case, a result of repeated beatings he and his siblings received as children, as well as by some of his truly horrific experiences in the service. But I could tell there was something even deeper than PTSD going on with him, something that led him to question his most basic values, something that led him to me and to the search for some kind of deeper spiritual connection that he felt he was lacking. I believe he was suffering from something that has recently been called moral injury. Moral injury has been described as the damage done to one's conscience or moral compass when that person perpetrates, witnesses, or fails to prevent acts that transgress their own moral and ethical values or codes of conduct. Again, moral injury is the damage done to one's conscience or moral compass when that person perpetrates, witnesses, or fails to prevent acts that transgress their own moral compass. Moral injury is a malady of epidemic proportions in the United States today. Evidence of the damage it causes is all around us. ever-increasing suicide rates among veterans and the public in general, increased feelings of anguish and alienation, hopelessness, and new heights of polarization along divisions in politics, race, ethnicity, and religion. In fact, the suicide rate among veterans has risen 35% since 2001. The youngest veterans are the hardest hit by this trend. The suicide rate for veterans age 18 to 34 is 44.5 deaths per 100,000, compared to the general population, which has a suicide rate of about 14 per 100,000. These veterans are among the victims of the wars of the past several decades. War is, of course, a boon to arms manufacturers and other military suppliers, as well as private security firms, all of whom are, not coincidentally, among the most powerful lobbyists in Washington. But the rest of us are paying a great price for war that has dragged on and on. And although our veterans are bearing perhaps the greatest burden, we are all affected in large and small ways. While moral injury is relatively new as a concept, it is as old as war, as old as injustice, as old as humanity itself. It manifests itself as an assault on the soul. But we are feeling it more in recent decades, in part because many of the leaders of our country no longer even bother to try to present a moral justification for their unjust acts. I don't remember any political leader presenting a moral argument for the armed conflicts of recent decades. When pressed, politicians might mutter something incoherent about needing to protect the so-called American way of life, which seems to mean the mindless consumption of fossil fuels, cheap plastic products, and electronics, and the pretense that we care about justice and democracy, when in fact our country has been intent on using violent force, most often to perpetuate unjust and undemocratic systems here and abroad. We are all witnesses to the many ways in which our own moral compasses have been damaged by decades of self-perpetuating injustices. An increasingly cruel and dysfunctional economic system, our elected leaders' inept handling of the pandemic, racist practices and policies that result in the loss of Black lives, and buffoonish and amoral political leaders whose purpose is only to gain power rather than to govern responsibly or concern themselves with the greater good. What all of us witnessed on January 6th of this year, an attempted insurrection in our nation's capital, followed in recent weeks by an attempt at gaslighting Americans into thinking that it never happened, witnessing this chain of events is enough in and of itself to inflict deep moral harm. If moral injury is the diagnosis, what is the treatment? What are we to do about it? Dr. David J. Shulkin, former Department of Veteran Affairs Undersecretary for Health, has said that the agency is trying to address the issue of moral injury among veterans. The VA has rolled out an array of suicide prevention efforts in recent years, increasing mental health staff, expanding its suicide crisis hotline, and creating programs to try to ensure same-day treatment for veterans who who walk in with urgent mental health needs. But, Dr. Shulkin said, too many people are falling through the cracks between active service and when they get to the VA. I've seen the faces and the very real pain of some of the individuals who have fallen through those very cracks. Some are in homeless shelters, some are in prisons, some are begging on the streets, some are forever in and out of institutions that offer far too little treatment and far too little hope. The treatment modalities that seem to work best are those that recognize moral injury as something that occurs not just at the individual level, but across communities, and that a community approach to treatment helps relieve and reduce the sense of isolation that can be so deadly. So, acknowledging, listening to, and witnessing moral injury is an important first step. After this first step, we need to begin the really difficult work, which is to rebuild a sense of engaged morality among all of us and among all of our communities, a sense of morality based on the common good, based on our heartfelt sense of what is right and what is wrong. For years, Reverend William Barber, co-chair of the Poor People's Campaign, has been saying in speeches that America has a heart problem. He has been saying that, in essence, we have somehow turned away from some of our most fundamental and heartfelt values, both as individuals and as a society. And I believe his assessment is correct. We haven't spent as much time as we need to identifying and affirming our values. We have mistaken entrenched political positions for moral values. We have mistaken fear and hate-mongering demagogues for authentic moral leaders. We have become so frightened that we have turned our backs not only on those outside of our own narrow and shallow circles, but also on our own basic human values. And moral injury has been the result of this turning away from what truly matters most. The treatment to the malady of moral injury is to turn back toward those most important fundamental values: compassion, love, and justice. Justice, which Cornel West has described as what love looks like in public. As religious liberals, we have a vital role to play in articulating these values, not as narrow purity codes, but as ways of life, as ways of healing, as ways of restoring health to those individuals and those communities that are suffering most from moral injury. We have a role to play not just in articulating those values, but also inviting others to join us in working for those values, holding our elected officials accountable for unjust and immoral laws and practices, working to implement more just laws and policies, standing in solidarity with those in our society who are hardest hit by our nation's lack of moral clarity and moral commitment to the common good, reaching out across differences of all kinds in recognition of the fact that an injury that affects any of us affects us all. You don't hear the word mercy much these days. It seems to have become something of a quaint and antiquated concept. But acts of mercy are exactly what's needed as we try to heal the moral injury that is a sign of our times. Mercy for the homeless veteran tortured by demons, mercy for the immigrant family torn apart by our country's malice and indifference, mercy for the laborer left behind by the cruel vagaries of the new economy, mercy for ourselves as we struggle to regain moral balance in a world out of balance in so many ways. When we hear the voices of those who suffer, those who cry out, those who want to pray even if they don't know how, those who have been victims of a merciless system, when we hear these voices, we need to listen and we need to let what we hear inform our actions. My hope and my prayer is that even in the midst of our own weariness and woundedness, our own tears and pain, we will continue to reach out, knowing that it is only together that we might restore wholeness and moral balance to a world that calls out for healing, for peace, for justice, for joy, for strength. May it be so. Amen.
Sometimes in our lives, we all have pain, we all have sorrow, but if we are wise, we know that there's always tomorrow. Lean on me when you're not strong, and I'll be your friend. I'll help you carry on, for it won't be long till I'm gonna need somebody to lean on. Please swallow your pride if I have things you need to borrow, for no one can fill those of your needs that you won't let show. Lean on me when you're not strong, and I'll be your friend. I'll help you carry on, for it won't be long till I'm gonna need somebody to lean on. Just call on me, brother, when you need a hand. We all need somebody to lean on. I just might have a problem that you'd understand. We all need somebody to lean on. If there is a load you have to bear that you can't carry, I'm right up the road. I'll share your load if you just call me. Lean on me when you're not strong.
be your friend. I hope you carry on, for it won't be long till I'm gonna need somebody to lean on.
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
you.